This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content, and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
There will be spoilers in this episode specifically from the world Sarah J. Maas has created, as well as topics mentioning sex work, physical violence, and substance abuse.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today, literally moments ago, our very own Jessica Marie has just finished reading Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. She's already read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. So, Jess, what are your feelings?
Oh my God, my fucking heart. First, I'm like, I think of how our trailer, and we're like, and the importance of not being the first love interest is so important. He's a good man. They've all been good men. I hurt for her, but I understand with certain things. I'm just kind of all over the place. I know this episode, we're not going to have any structure. We're going to be back and forth between Throne of Glass and then Crown of Midnight. I finished Crown of Midnight on my birthday, and I put the book down. I couldn't even go to bed. I had to just walk away. And everybody I keep seeing on TikTok that are spoiler free, everybody just keeps saying, you know, if for the first two books are kind of foundational, but like it really kicks off into gear after that. And I go, how it gets better than this? And I don't know how it's going to get better. And I'm just so emotional. I don't even know where to start. There's just a lot going on.
So I think a good place to start would be, because it's the freshest, let's just talk about Sam Cortland.
I physically, until I had like Matt Donovan in my head for some reason, until they were like, oh, he's dark, and then she came back from the summer and he's all tan, and I go, okay, that is not Matt Donovan. But he's so nice, and I feel like everybody knew, and she knew, but was in denial about it too, about her relationship with him.
Well, they're 17. You know,
yeah. It's such a special, like, we've, you know, some of us have gone through that 17-year-old high school love where it doesn't negate the love that you have for that person. Like everything, it's all becoming. And even when they finally free themselves from Arobin, he's like, if you're going to hell, I'm going to hell with you. Everything is about your undying love for each other, which is so sweet and so pure. They're so, and I think this is just reflective of Sarah's characters, is they were good for each other at that point in their lives. They were exactly what they needed. They understood. Even what was the part where he goes, you know, if I'm having like, that was like, it's a double whammy, because she didn't know how to tell him her secret. And he respects her so much where he's like, look, that's your secret to tell. You know, you do it in your time, which I thought was such a beautiful thing, because so often we get gaslighted into telling certain information that we're not ready to. And when she just winds up saying like a different lie of how she's a coward. And then I think of Crown of Midnight with Nehemia, those being the last words, and they were already on repeat in her head. And then knowing that she, you know, sometimes we're our own worst critics. So then when the people you care about say the thing that you already thought about yourself, then you're like, wow, I knew I thought about that, but now the people that I love think that about me too. It just, my fucking heart. And then when Sam's like, sometimes when I do feel that way, I just say, I am Sam Cortland and I am not afraid. And then I remember that she's been saying that in the first two books to herself. And then I realized right before this episode, because Laura got me an awesome shirt for a Crescent City shirt, when Lahava goes, my friends are with me and I am not afraid. Oh my God. I love it. I love it. I'm only, in books 1 through 2.5 or whatever. And I love that I've so far read the series in the order that I have. I'm glad I didn't read Throne of Glass first. I'm glad I didn't, I'm glad I've read ACOFAE series first, then I went to Crescent City, and now I'm here. And I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. But then, take the relationships, like the romantic relationships out of it. I am so happy. I'm going to get emotional. I'm so happy that there are generations of younger girls who have, whether they can relate to, Celaena or Bryce or Feyre in regards to, how confident they are, or, just maybe not as strong, because that's a whole different conversation that we'll definitely get into. I'm so happy that there's characters like these that Sarah has written for a younger generation that I know that I have never had. And to imagine growing up in a world not questioning, it's not a matter of, can I do that? Or it's a matter of when, not an if. And I think that is such a beautiful thing for young women to be exposed to right now.
I agree with you completely. I also think it's really important that in Sarah's characters, she never shies away from how they're feeling. Celaena is angry and she's full of vengeance and she's, stubborn and kind of mean. And she's all of these things because we are all of these things. And she's not perfect. I mean, my God. She's not perfect.
And how you're allowed to be all these things and feel all these things, and it's not one or the other, and I think back of our ACOMAF episode, I don't know when that's airing, but in our ACOMAF episode, we say, it's not just about feeling one or the other. You could feel them all because we feel them all. It's overwhelming. And especially if you think about her age at this point, she's 16, she turned 17 in the Red Desert. And your hormones are all over the place to begin with. It's a lot.
Now that you've read this, we can safely say that Sam Cortland is the foundation. He is the bedrock of what kind of makes up Celaena. We know that she uses his mantra over and over, I am not afraid, I am not afraid. And Sam is referenced enough throughout books 1 and 2, where you have something happened. You have the gist of a backstory. And now in Assassin's Blade, the backstory, what happened. And it's really important. And there's a lot on TikTok. There's a lot on Instagram and just real sad things. Sam never knew that Celaena was Aelin. Sam never got the chance to teach Aelin or Celaena how to play cards. He said, if we live through this, I'll teach you how to play cards. And they didn't. It's very sad. And I think a lot about what happened to Sam and how he must have been feeling. He gets caught, he's drugged. We learn that he is tortured pretty horrifically.
Oh, yeah.
He's blinded, his fingers are all broken, and he has slashes all up and down his chest, and his face is almost unrecognizable. We know that. He's a 17-year-old kid.
They might be assassins, but they're still 17.
And he knew, because of the time frame that this happened, he knew that he wasn't going to be rescued. He knew that he was going to die there. And I just think that is the saddest, scariest part of that. It's very reminiscent of Danica in Crescent City when she couldn't stop herself and she knew what was going to happen. And I personally feel that very strongly. that is kind of a really raw emotion that I don't think people touch on a lot. Just how scared he must have been, just knowing that that was it.
Nobody was coming for him because there was, like you said, the time frame. It was just, if it's this time, then come get me. But by that time, it had already been too late.
Right. Right. And then, so Jess, you just finished it. So Arobin, like, how do you feel about Arobin? I saw in the notes that you had some.
So I was going back and forth for a while, but it really, I guess I'll go backwards, or I'll kind of go all over the place. I had notes because he was just saying, like, I really do love you. And this obviously, Psych 101 goes into Celaena's issues. She hasn't been able to say I love you to anybody, even though she's felt it. Clearly, we've gone through 3 people that she has loved in different capacities. I was very confused, I guess, because I was like, does he love her like a daughter? Does he love her like maybe the way he shouldn't, because of the paternal relationship? And then when he says to Farron, was, of course he's freaking working. It just like things just start clicking together when I think of book 2. Let Arobin know that I'm out, that I'm working for the king, that I'm the king's assassin. You know, like, I'm not just the assassin of Otterland. I run shit. And then when Farron's like, why are you even doing this? He set everything into motion. His fragile masculinity is he was pissed that Celaena left, that she was with Sam, that she chose Sam over him, because eventually, you find out that he was hoping it would be his second in command, like everything. And then he says, well, I don't like sharing my things. I'm sorry. If I can't have her, no one can have her. Sit the fuck down, you small dick man. Such small dick energy. I hate him. I hate a lot of people. But it screams how terrible of a person he is. And he's not the only guy who acts like this, whether it's in Sarah's world or the real world.
Arobin is I feel slimy whenever I think about him.
Ew! I'm going to go there because we're just going to talk about it since you're feeling slimy. The fucking bidding? Are you kidding me? And is it Lysandra or Lysandra? Lysandra. She's just, maybe it's because of how she was groomed and the fact that he uses Celaena's money towards Lysandra, knowing how she feels about her. And I know that we didn't talk about this a lot this week. I had my notes because I'd like to keep notes, and then I was not allowed to make any more speculation. So basically, it was just some reaction videos that I was posting on TikTok and sending to Laura. I don't know if Lysandra's going to change, but I want to cut a bitch. Like, every time she opened her mouth, I was going to pop her. I'm sorry. That's just where I was at with her. And I still am. No wonder she's ready to go off when she saw her at Davis's party, when she saw Archer in book 2.
Well, and you're talking about bidding on virginity.
Yes.
Celaena mentions it in book 2 about Archer and how they had an auction for him too, because that's how the brothel is run. The top ones get bidded off like that, and it's just so disgusting. And
I think we're so comfortable talking about sex work and sex trafficking when it comes to women and girls and children who are female, but nobody ever openly discusses that same topic with boys and men. And it's interesting to see that it was even brought up at some point.
It is. It's very interesting. Also very interesting. Jessica, how do you feel about Celaena and her big reveal at the end of Crown of Midnight? Who is Celaena Sardothien?
Aelin Galathynius.
Very good.
I know with my notes, I was just questioning it, but then I was back and forth. And then I didn't know if Aelin was the Fae version or if I was still confused. I was. And then I had seen some fan art, but I haven't been reading captions. But I was piecing certain things together. And I know in the beginning of Throne of Glass, I said, oh, that's interesting. I told you, Laura. I said, it's really interesting that Celaena and Aelin both have blonde hair.
Yes, very interesting.
You're like, that is interesting. I'm glad you're taking note of that. I did not connect the pieces for the longest time. And even at one point when she had gone through the portal, I was like, wait, is it possible? Is Celaena? I'm so confused. But then I saw a fan art of, because I know what Rowan looks like at this point just because of book talk and stuff. I saw a fan art with Rowan and Aelin, and then I saw Fleetwood. And then I remembered some meme somebody had posted about one of like the book talks that Sarah had done at a Barnes & Noble or something. And somebody had asked her a question, and Sarah said, the only person who's safe in my novels is Fleetfoot. So I was like, shit, fuck, Celaena dies, Aelin and Rowan adopt Fleetfoot. I was already there because of the fan art that I saw. I obviously know about the two of them because it's a spoiler at this point. And I had told you the second I said in my notes, I really hope Celaena and Chaol are endgame. And then everything started clicking together. I go, oh my God, she's this person. Oh my God, she's this person.
But also thank God, because I was biting my tongue so fucking hard the whole time you were just going on and on about Chaol, because
I think maybe I just continue to have terrible taste in people. But I never said, oh, Chaol is my book boyfriend. I liked him for her at that time, just like I liked Dorian. But then when those pieces started clicking together, I'm like, they're cousins. No, why is nobody talking about the fact that they're cousins? But then I think of royalty now, and a lot of times
they're all cousins
related.
Yeah.
That it is what it is, I guess. I'm really glad that they didn't sleep together.
How very satisfying was it for you when you were reading Assassin's Blade and they're at the party, the comment of, and he had sapphire eyes, and he's wearing the mask, and then there's the bodyguard behind him, and he's got the sword. Like, that's Dorian and Chaol. Like,
100. I loved knowing that, and I really appreciate that you told me to read in this order, because I don't want to say I'm in a rush to read them. I obviously really do want to read them, but I'm also thinking of our timeline with the podcast. It's easy to read books 1 and 2, read Assassin's Blade, and then want to start all over again, knowing the information that we know now. So as much as I continue to read, and I know I'll never have what's a book or what's a series that you would wish you could reread again for the first time, right? It'll be interesting to go through an eventual reread knowing what I know.
It absolutely is, especially when you go back and read Throne of Glass. Everything, like, it's all there. All the little hints, all the foreshadowing.
And there's a lot of knowing what we know at the end of book 2. There's a lot of foreshadowing in Assassin's Blade. I mean, every little thing. When she's as Celaena, she feels the northern wind. When she's talking about Terrasen, her longing for I'm trying to look at the quote that I had sent you, where she's like, the stag is the lord of the north. It's always there, even when what is it? It's I'm trying to look. So the people of Terrasen will always know how to find their way home. There's just such a kinship with her people and her land. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and I don't know if you could answer this yet. 2 questions that come to mind right now. One is, did Arobin give her the name Celaena? Do we find out how the origin of the name Celaena was? Because he obviously know who she is, because that's hinted throughout the entire Assassin's Blade.
It's not explicitly explained, but it is mentioned in later books.
Okay. And then obviously there's going to be a shift in how she's addressed. And I'm not looking at you because I don't want it to give it away. When is that shift? Because I'm still referring to her as Celaena because that's how I know her. But everybody is very open about Aelin, and, you know, I have refused to even touch Etsy because there's names that are coming up. I have no idea who it is. I try to type in Celaena for, like, even something for Celaena merch, and then I think I saw something that came up for Aelin, and I closed the window. I go, nope, I'm not going down that rabbit hole, not yet, because I don't know what's going on. I guess I just want to know, when's that shift? Can you tell me? You can totally say if you can't because you don't want to ruin it for me.
I can. The theory that Jess, I told you about the other day, is that the books follow the stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go through, the Throne of Glass would be shock. Denial is Crown of Midnight. She's not accepting. She's denying who she is and saying, like, you know, I am not going to do all of this. I don't care about everything that's going on. I'm just going to live my life, and these bigger, wider issues are not my problem, right? That's her whole fight with Nehemia. The third book, Heir of Fire, is anger.
Perfectly titled.
Yeah. So Heir of Fire is anger. I mean, she's working through all of her anger. Imagining what that kind of work entails will get you where you need to be when it comes to how you would address her, right? Because the next one is bargaining, and that is very much Queen of Shadows. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to, like, give anything away.
No, don't. And I've been really good. I haven't even read the synopsis of each book. I've just got, you know, I don't want to preview. I don't want anything. I'm just going with it at this point. And I know it takes me a while to get there, but then once I just start going with the flow, I'm gone. Like, I'm not trying to guess. I have speculations and stuff, as you know, but I'm totally in on this journey. I'm immersed. It's beautiful. And I've only read 2 books. And when I was towards the end of the second book, I was like, okay, like, I'm not emotional. I'm good. I'm good. And then it happened, and I don't know if it's her writing or how I just process things, but I think of that meme where it goes, I'm fine, everything's fine. And then it hits me like a fucking Mack truck, and I'm like on the floor sobbing. It's hilarious. I'm laughing at myself, but I know I'm not the only person because everybody processes this stuff differently as well.
You're very right. And of course, one of the most wonderful things about our friendship is I never quite know how you're going to react to things. And I really wasn't expecting that reaction out of Crown of Midnight, but I'm glad I got it. It's fantastic. And just knowing that you're so invested now, for me, knowing what happens is going to be absolutely wonderful. I will say that Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Assassin's Blade is kind of, I'm not going to say a wrap-up of Celaena's story, but it's very telling that Chaol knows who Celaena is at the end of the book. Like, that's the first time where you're like, Aelin. Celaena is Aelin, and I think he says, like, she's the enemy of the king.
I think it's also important because at the end of, or, you know, in part of Assassin's Blade, Sam goes, when you trust me enough, I'm ready to listen. And she obviously never told him. And even despite the fallout that Celaena and Chaol had, she trusts him enough with this, not just life-changing, but world-changing truth and secret. And I think whatever happens in this next, I think chapter, we can say, like, you know, Assassin's Blade through Crown of Midnight is Celaena's, like you said, Celaena's story, her chapter. We all go on to our next adventure. That chapter of Aelin's life, I think it's important that Chaol had a big part of it. You know, like I said, whatever happens there, you know, we go move on, but he knows, you know, so what happens next? I don't know.
So what else do we know? We know that Chaol knows Celaena is Aelin.
Has Dorian put the pieces together? No, because it was Chaol looking at the map. That's right.
Sweet, sweet Dorian.
Oh, man.
He's got his own thing going on.
Which I get. I don't blame him. You know, I think he's coming to terms with certain things, and now he feels like he's doing it solo because Nehemia's not there. Whereas once he started admitting to himself this, his magic, it was too late to be like, well, where do I go from here?
And also, it's important to point out now that Chaol is not comfortable with magic. That's kind of made clear by how standoffish he is after Celaena came back through the portal and he had seen her shift into Fae and use fire magic, and then she came back and their relationship already strained, already very much broken. It's not there anymore. And he's very reserved. He doesn't speak to her. I remember he's leaning up against the door when the healer is patching her up. It's just kind of awkward.
And even in regards to Dorian, after the whole magic exposure of it all, he's just thinking it's her. He's like, why does she need his blood? He's curious and questioning Dorian, not understanding, well, why does she keep looking at him when magic is involved? And in that regard, he's very much the king's soldier. Boo, magic. Boo you. What I would give for some fucking magic. I feel like Julia, you know Julia and the Magicians?
Yes.
Where she's like, I'll do anything. That's how I feel. I would be like Julia.
I think it's also important to point out we're all on the same page, how fucking hot Dorian is. He's my guy.
He's very on brand.
Yeah, no, he's gorgeous. He's charming. He's got power.
Dark hair, very emo.
He's also funny and skilled.
He's smart.
Yeah, he reads the books, and he is never afraid of Celaena, ever. I feel personally that Dorian sees Celaena as, and this probably goes back to a lot of things, more as like an equal.
Yeah.
In a way.
I totally saw that.
Yeah, where Chaol doesn't. He keeps saying you need to stay away from her. She's dangerous. She's just an assassin. We pulled her out of the mines. And Dorian treats her differently, which, knowing now that, they've met before.
But even if that backstory isn't there, I think it shows Dorian's respect to Celaena as a person, that it's not, you're just an assassin, you're just this slave from the salt mines. You are a person who has worth and value. And even in Throne of Glass, when she's writing the letter because she's requesting books, somebody says, you're not supposed to write the prince. Celaena goes, I do what I want, basically. It reminds me of Rusan when he goes, because I can. And that's what okay, and I am still going to correspond with him. And I think, like you said, that's really important to note, because he was bored with all the suitors that his mother kept presenting, and he was always challenged by Celaena because nobody would speak to him or challenge him the way that she did.
Right. Speaking of women, I know you have a thought, or at least a little bit of an opinion about Kaltain.
I don't even know. I don't like her, but I feel bad for her because she's definitely a pawn in everything. That doesn't change the fact that every time she's showing up currently, again, I want to punch her. When Nehemia died and Celaena's in the prison and Kaltain goes, oh, well, that sucks. I get to get married. Read the room. I don't fucking care about your stupid marriage. In my head also, you'll appreciate this, Laura, I imagine Duke Barrington looks like the Duke in Moulin Rouge.
Oh.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the title Duke. But
it probably is the title Duke.
But I imagine, especially when he's described, because he doesn't really have a physical description, but that slimy smarminess that he has around Kaltain and always trying to get her to do more than she wants, and she's just trying to be flirty, especially on the first book. I just get the Duke vibes all the time, and it creeps me out that much more.
It was implied, though never explicitly stated, that he was raping her while she was in the prison.
Oh yeah, that and the guards turned a blind eye and all that stuff. That made me really sad because I mean, anything about that topic is very,
Bleh. So if we keep going on the theme of women that piss Celaena right off, I think we can go straight to Ansel in the desert. That one hurt. That betrayal was a bit painful because Celaena just desperately wanted a friend, and she thought she had a friend.
And a female friend. She never had a female friend. And I can't remember if we've had this discussion on the podcast or not, but I think so often, especially in society, we're taught that boys will come and go, girls will come and go, whatever, the romantic relationships will always come and go, but your platonic friendships will, quote unquote, be there forever. They're going to be the relationships that get you through things. So when you have a betrayal in friendship, sometimes that seems even more heart-wrenching because that was supposed to be the person that you get to confide in, to hang out with, to do everything, even if other things don't work out. Those platonic friendships are essentially the, quote unquote, a way to find your found family past the romantic relationships, right? How awful and shitty. And it came from what the Mute King was saying, was like it came from a place of hurt and a place from anger, and not that it's acceptable, but I think it says a lot about that king, of the type of leader that he is. And he did it with all of his assassins. And I think it said a lot how he treated his people, how he treated his kingdom, and having that understanding that even though he didn't agree with her, he understood. He goes, it came from a place of hurt. That doesn't make it okay. There is a lot of growth and understanding there that not everybody gets to that level of understanding, especially as a leader. And I think it says a lot about his character, which I also think translates into Celaena, not just in that moment, but her as a person. And maybe this is just how Sarah writes a lot of her characters, the selflessness that she has. She's very much you can do whatever you want to me, you can say whatever you want to me, but don't hurt the people I care about. And the fact, you see it in the beginning of Assassin's Blade where Arobynn has the people beat her, or has them hold Sam down. And she thought he was going to get completely tortured and she was going to have to watch. And then it wound up being they were holding him down to not fight off the people who were going to beat her up. And her thought before she passed out was, I'm so glad it wasn't him. It had nothing to do about her being in pain. It had everything to be like, oh, well, thank God it wasn't him. I'd rather it be me. And you see that again in books 1 and 2, when she wins the championship. The king doesn't say, if you betray me, if you go against this whole agreement, you're not going to get hurt. Kale's going to get hurt. Nehemiah's going to get, her family's going to get hurt. It's never about her. It's that emotional torture that would hurt her more than the physical torture. And I see that becoming a reoccurring theme in her selflessness through her journey.
Sure. That's kind of a criticism that they have of her. But before I move on to this other point, I just want to say that one of the things that I found personally so painful about Ansel's betrayal was that when Ansel and Celaena are riding the horses on the beach, they make a point to say that that's one of the first times where she was just carefree and happy on the beach with the horse and the wind and just that feeling. She was happy. She felt free. And then it all just came crashing down.
And this is a lot because of, how she was found, how she's been working under Arobynn. I feel that also happens a lot, that basically if you're an orphan, you get adopted either by the madams or, assassins, and then you're forever indentured to them. So there is no such thing as freedom. You're constantly being watched. You're always on alert. You're reporting to somebody. So the fact that even though she was in the Red Desert, like you said, she had that sense of freedom. When was the last time that she had that? And maybe she'll have a flashback. I don't know yet. But it says a lot about her and her journey.
It does. And Ansel's story is important for, a lot of reasons later on. But we get a little bit of the Witch Kingdom backstory and the Witch Kingdom geography, which is repeated again during the carnival when Celaena goes to see Yellowlegs in the wagon of mirrors. And I know that you are aware of Manon. I know that you don't know anything about Manon, but you will meet her very soon. But the background of the witches in the Witch Kingdom is important.
Is there a summary somewhere? Because I feel like there was a lot of info dumping with the witches in the Witch Kingdom, and I want to look for it, but I don't want to be spoiled.
It's not necessary. It's
Okay.
repeated enough throughout all of it that you will understand it without even meaning to. I always forget during these rereads because when I reread this series, I usually start with Heir of Fire and go that way, just because everything that happens to Sam is very painful, and Throne of Glass, I feel like I know it backwards and forwards, so I don't really read Crown of Midnight very often, but I always forget about that damn carnival, and I always forget about Yellowlegs and everything that she says, and that she knew about Dorian and all of that.
And this is unrelated, really. Maybe it will be later down the line. Holland feels like a background character. They just kind of throw his name out there. He's the spoiled prince. He has this carnival, blah, blah, blah. He's the son that who's at boarding school. Does he come back in, or are we just pretending that he's the prince? Again, I'm not looking at you. If Dorian dies, Holland is technically the crown prince, so there might be a role there. You know what? Don't answer that. I don't know. I don't even want you to... Never mind. I don't need to worry about that. It'll play out the way it needs to play out. Sorry if you guys are listening and you probably are screaming at us yes or no. I really don't want to know. I love a good surprise. I hate terrible surprises in my life. But with these books, I don't even know how the fuck it'll go.
And as I told you earlier, it's really just important that you are aware of names.
Yes.
So Roland, for example, Dorian's cousin.
Yes.
Right? It's not super important that we know about him, but we need to know his name. And we know that Roland left with Caltaine and Parrington to go. We know they're all together. They left. They're not in the castle.
To go to Elway.
Yeah, they all went away.
Speaking of going away, and I think of Elway and I think of Nehemiah, there was a part in Crown of Midnight where the point of view shifted. And they were talking about a slave, and it wasn't a slave in Andavir. It was a slave maybe in Elway or something. And they were saying this person was there, and they found out that Nehemiah died. And then I remember texting you, I go, oh my gosh, is that slave Aelin? But now that I know that Aelin was always in the castle, it's somebody else. I have not met this person yet.
It is not somebody else. That is just a passage to show that slave camp started a revolution.
Okay.
That is all that is.
So it was just how word travels.
Yeah.
If it were a movie, or if it was this visual thing, it would be that flash of, meanwhile over here,
yeah,
this is what's happening, and then transition and goes to the next scene.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I have another question. When Sam is talking to Celaena about what he had to give to Arobynn or something, of why he's never going to touch her again, and Sam says he forgives Arobynn and said if he stopped touching or hurting her or whatever, any physical contact with Celaena, he'd forgive him. Do we know what he's forgiving him for?
For beating Celaena.
But what does forgiveness have anything to do?
So after Celaena comes back from the Red Desert, and Arobynn is forgive me. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for beating you.
Right.
And he gives her the brooch and all of that stuff. Arobynn runs a really tight ship with Sam and Celaena. Those are his two favorites, more or less.
Right.
So when that happened, when Arobin starts beating Celaena. And the three assassins are holding back Sam. Sam is screaming at Arobin, I will kill you, I will kill you, because Sam is deeply and desperately in love with Celaena at this point.
Right.
But Celaena doesn't really realize it. So in order to continue like a tight ship working situation, there can't be any sort of grudges or bad blood. So in order to alleviate that, that is where the forgiveness kind of comes in. So even if it's not real, even if it's like a fake kind of thing, it's like a concession. All right, I will forgive you if you promise to never lay a hand on her again.
Oh, and because of the way he runs things, like that forgiveness goes further because of it's not just them two. He has his own league of assassins. He calls it the guild of assassins. He needs everybody to stay in line.
Yeah.
Okay. That was one of the things that I said, forgive him for Wyatt. I don't understand. And I knew all what we had just discussed, but I didn't make the correlation.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I think it's important that we bring up the Pirate Lord. We bring up Rolf.
Yeah, I feel that I didn't pay attention as much in that part because I think I just had in the back of my mind, I could do this half listening, and I couldn't. I did it for that part of the book, and that wasn't something I should have done.
So the most important things that we need to remember about Rolf and the Pirate Lord and Skull's Bay and all of that goodness is we need to know that Sam and Celaena freed the slaves, fucked up his ships, brought down one of the towers and the catapults, and that there is something called Shipbreaker, the big chain that keeps the cove safe. That's the first thing. The second thing we need to know about this is that Rolf has everything called the Sea Dragon. That's important. It's the name of his boat. It's the name of the inn. It's on his sword. Everything is in the shape of a sea dragon. That is important. And then I think the third most important thing about what happens in Skull's Bay is we learn that Rolf sold his soul to get a map on his hands that moves and shows like treasure, enemies, and like the tides and all the important stuff that a sailor would need. And that when magic left, it's not clear yet in these books what happened to magic, but how can I phrase this? When what happened to magic happened, his map stopped working.
So now he just has a tattoo of maps on his hand that are of no use.
Exactly. It's just a tattoo of the continent. And it doesn't.
So now he sold his soul for nothing,
right? And it doesn't work.
Oh,
yeah.
That seems like it could be a big thing.
So those are the important parts of that story, and I really like Rolf as a character. I think he's great.
He comes back. I mean, I guess he does come back if we're saying we have to remember about the sea dragon. I mean, some of these names. Who's the other name? Irene. I remember I feel like she's going to.
Everybody that's named
later on.
Like, is right. Everyone that's named and that Celaena has kind of a prolonged interaction with is important. So I'd say Rolf and Irene, absolutely.
Ansel is definitely coming back.
Yeah, Ansel, Sam, Arobin.
What? Sam's gonna come back?
Well, he's just important.
Well, I never know with these sci-fi things, fantasy, anybody, I just live in they'll come back. They always come back. And I'm learning that that's not the case.
So, that's actually a really good point, and it will segue into another really good discussion. Sam is dead. Sam is not coming back. Throughout the course of this book series, Throne of Glass, people will die. People die, and it sucks, and it's sad. And just like in Crescent City, people die, and it sucks, and it's sad. And the major criticism between Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, there's a few, but the big one is that no one has died yet.
Or if they die, they keep coming back.
They came back, yeah. Which makes everything kind of anticlimactic. And I know that we've talked about that before.
Which is also where the fan theory, I mean, we'll come back, we'll circle back in a second, but goes back to the fan theory that we keep seeing on TikTok of nobody has died yet. So who's to say that it might be Cassian and silver flames, especially with Elaine making the comment as the seer, as she did. And maybe that's more of a trajectory for Nesta. But we digress. We'll circle back at a later time, as this is our Throne of Glass part 1.
So since it is Throne of Glass, and since you have now read, 2.5, you are pretty familiar with Celaena. And just as Celaena, and I sent you the TikTok about how people don't really like Celaena, and they have a hard time with her, and the Celaena Feyre comparisons.
I said right off the bat, I read Throne of Glass, first couple chapters in, I go, I love her. I love her swagger. I love her confidence. I get such Bryce vibes. I love Celaena. I was here for Celaena. I love all her little quips. And even later in Crown of Midnight, I love where she goes, I'd brag about me if I slept with me too. I love that sense of self and that self-confidence. And I think there's this influencer who I really love, and she's very open about how saying she didn't have much self-confidence, and she's completely switched the narrative. And she goes, not only do you need to be your own best friend, but 2, why can't you switch the narrative? And why can't you have a sense of self? Anybody can do it. And I think that as somebody who doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, that's why I love Celaena and Bryce, because I think, man, I wish I could emulate that. I wish I was so sure of myself the way these 2 strong characters are. They're not strong and self-assured for no reason. It's rightfully earned. They deserve to give themselves a pat on the back. How come it's okay for men to do that, but it makes people feel uncomfortable when women act in the same way? That being said, I had posted a TikTok, you had seen it, and I gave basically a shorter answer to that. And there's been some debate through the comments, and I appreciate everybody making the comments, because they say, well, look, this is the thing with Celaena and Bryce, this is the other thing with Feyre. And I understand where everybody is defending who they support, because it makes sense. Because even when reading, because like we said, I read ACOFAE first, I think we could all relate to Feyre when you're unsure, you're emotionally strong, but not necessarily physically strong, or things, ebb and flow and where we are in our mental state. And there is a relatability with Feyre, right? We can all see ourselves in her. And at the same time, that because we could see ourselves in her, we know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We understand that you could find and dig in yourself for that strength that sometimes we need to find, even if we don't feel strong all the time. So I understand where people are coming from. But that doesn't mean she's a bad character, And I think that's the debate, that people think it has to be either or. But I understand where if you're comparing people, you're like, well, they're 2 very different people, Celaena and Feyre. But just like we're all very different people, that doesn't make me like somebody less because they have more confidence than somebody else. But it's really interesting to see that debate, that it has to be either or, and why it can't work together.
And if you use the comparison of like Feyre's like white bread, and Celaena is like, I don't know, like chocolate ciabatta or something, like, both are good in separate occasions. Like sometimes you want one, sometimes you want the other. There's no reason why you can't love both.
Especially bread. Who doesn't like bread?
Yeah, who doesn't like bread?
Take carb in any form.
And to like pull the characteristics that you need at that time from those characters. Sometimes you want to, I think of, look at things the way that Feyre looked at things when she first crossed over into Prythian. Everything was brighter, the food tasted different, kind of have a sense of wonder. And then Celaena is very jaded. She's young, but she is so shaped by everything that's happened to her that she's like a blade. She's sharp, she's capable, and she can read people, and she doesn't fall for bullshit. And sometimes you need to draw from that too. And I think it speaks to Sarah that she can write characters that are so different. Even at Feyre's most fierce, she is not Celaena.
No, she's fierce in her own right, which is just like each one of us as individuals are fierce in our own light. We all have, and I know we talk about this through like our Instagram stories, and we all have different lived experiences, right? So we're going to be interpreting and applying the lessons that we're taking from, there's always going to be those overarching themes. But we're going to be applying them differently based on how we've experienced life or how we haven't experienced it. And, everyone's going to have a different lived experience. What I went through at 13 is going to be something different than somebody else went through at 13. What you go through in your 20s and stuff is going to be completely different from somebody else. And then you also have people who, depending on their lived experiences, they could be going through things at 15 that people don't go through till their 20s and 30s. So I think it's just very different. And to, I guess, encapsulate that with each of her characters in their own regard to what you said. It says a lot about Sarah as a writer because there isn't just one person. There isn't a cookie cutter thing for anybody except, a nice male who's dark hair and light eyes and just so dreamy.
Hey, we love Dorian here. I cannot speak enough about how much I love Dorian.
I can say that I have not found my Throne of Glass male yet. I will say that.
Which is fair.
The way I cried about Reese, I can say that I don't feel that way about any of the males that I've met yet. I think they've been nice. I think they've been good for her at the points in her life that she's had her involvement with. But cool. All right, next.
So that's a really good way to transition onto what do you expect from the rest of the series?
Hurt and heartbreak.
Well, about Rowan, that he exists. And do you know what he looks like?
I mean, I've seen fan art. I know he has like whitish hair or blonde hair. A lot of people, or a lot of the fan art that I've seen, he has a tattoo on his face. Oh, and his hair is short. And he doesn't look like your basic white boy. He also doesn't look, so okay. But I don't know his story. Now that she was basically sent off, unbeknownst to Kale, to her family, who has Fae ties. I don't know who she's going to meet over there. I don't know if Aerofire is going to be while this is happening in Otterlin and Riftfold. Is it R-I-T or R-I-F?
R-I-F-T.
Riftfold. Sorry, guys, I do the audio. So let me just say that I've been doing the audio for this book. I don't know if it's this is happening over here in Otterlin. This is happening over here in her aunt's lands.
Wendelin.
So I don't know how it's going to play out. I know there's going to be war. There's going to be adventure. There's going to be some sort of takeover at a point. It'll be interesting to see, and this is all based on assumption, when things start clicking for the king of Otterlin that, oh shit, she knows. Or that he realizes who Celaena is. Because at the end of Crown of Midnight, all he knows is somebody opened a portal. It was just for a nanosecond, but I could feel it. And I know he has that special ring. I think I had made a comment to you. I go, is he a demon? Is he something? His eyes turned black. And I only thought of that because of Supernatural. So now I'm wondering the connection there. Again, I'm not looking at you because I don't want to see any reactions. So I don't want to dig so much into it because part of the thing, if I start digging too much, I start getting ahead of myself. And I've finally gotten to the place of enjoying the journey instead of trying to make speculations. And I think that's also difficult because I think we've already established at this point, I like being right. And I try to jump the gun. And if I have speculations, fine. If I don't, if they're wrong, okay. But it's fun to try to guess what's going on before it actually happens. Like with Cain, when things started snapping into place for Cain, I was really excited. And I even told you, I don't know, maybe I don't know, but I just want to keep reading and finding out more.
Comparing the worlds, do you feel that this setting, this world is bigger than the world that was set up for us in ACOFAE?
I think it's already bigger, and I haven't even gone everywhere because sometimes I keep the map of Aurelia up when I'm reading to try to get a geographic location of where the references are, and I'm pretty much on the right side of the map a lot of the time, at least the first couple books, until in Assassin's Blade, where Ansel is talking about her territory and the Witch Kingdom and Briarcliff, and and then you learn about the desert, the Red Desert and everything. So I feel there's a lot of crisscross happening, but it also helps understand why travel is taking so long. It's taking 2 weeks. If you look at Riftfold and then in proximity to Andevere, that was 2 weeks. And it's like this much. I'm holding an inch. Sorry, I was holding up to the screen. And then when they're talking about going over to the Red Desert, that was over a month's journey. So it's really interesting. There's a lot going on that I still feel like I don't understand. Everything is all over the place. I do look forward to, now that we know about Celaena, I do look forward to finding out more about Terrasen and just maybe even seeing that world. You know how there's TikToks of the different courts in Prythian?
Oh, don't worry. I have this saved for you.
Okay, that's fine. Yay.
Don't worry.
To just have a visual, because I just imagine it as this cold place, because they always say like the cold north wind, it's in the north. There's a lot of reference to it being cold, not in a inhabitable sort of way. I'm just interested to learning more. And I feel in regards to pace, I'm typically a speed reader, but I know these are clearly books that you can't just go right in. I'm sure some people do. And thank God when they first came out, you were done with the book and then you waited. You had to wait, and you sit with that more and you process it more, and then it just kind of spirals and you go on and on and on. And now with all the books available and the popularity with Book Talk and Bookstagram and just everybody wanting, and we're all stuck inside quarantine and wanting to just immerse yourselves even further, it really is the spiral of you want your fix. You want to just kind of submerge yourself in all the information as much as possible, as fast as possible, and somehow trying to still digest everything from before, because you want to go into the next thing so quickly, but you still have to process everything that you just found out also. I don't know.
What would you say to people that have not read Assassin's Blade?
In regards to should they read it first? Because I've seen people starting with Assassin's Blade, and now after reading it, after books 1 and 2, I thought, wow, you are totally missing out on the Assassin's Blade experience if you're starting off with it.
That's a good point, but that's not even what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is I'm going to say significant portion of the fandom that have not read Assassin's Blade and also have not read another book in the series.
Oh, that's the Tower of Dawn, right?
Yeah, that haven't read Tower of Dawn. They just won't for whatever reason. But now, what do you say to people that won't read Assassin's Blade because, it's a prequel, it's not like necessary to the story?
If it wasn't necessary to the story, it wouldn't have been written.
Boom. There you have it.
And also, like, from an audio perspective, I remember telling you, I said, how is the novella longer than the second book?
Yeah. I said it at the beginning. I'll say it again. Assassin's Blade is foundational. You need all of that, especially as the series goes on, but you really need to have that relationship with Sam because it's brought up over and over and over again. I know when you reread Throne of Glass and you reread Crown of Midnight, he's all over it.
Right.
Even in little throwaway kind of sentences and
even I can't think of specific examples right now, but there were throwaway things in Assassin's Blade. You just knew what would be considered throwaway in Assassin's Blade was a direct connection to either Throne of Glass or Crown of Midnight. And you wouldn't make that connection if you read Assassin's Blade first.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If Assassin's Blade was supposed to be first, that would have been the first book.
Yeah, you can't read Assassin's Blade first.
But it's like when you're getting to know somebody and understanding their history, right? You're getting to know, first you're just finding likes and dislikes. And then when you start going a little bit deeper and how they were in high school, and then you start sharing childhood stories, and then you also maybe you get to the childhood traumas at some point. Those backstories are foundational in understanding who a person is. So understanding this backstory is foundational in this pivotal character. Imagine prequels for ACOTAR. What was happening, not even just a throwaway, here's a chapter in 500 years ago, or here's 50 years ago of Under the Mountain. Stuff that was happening in Valeris. Not so much Feyre's life, but the inner circle before Under the Mountain.
When they were kids and stuff too.
I love that shit. Oh my goodness.
Quickly, back to what you were saying. In Crown of Midnight, when it's Chaol's birthday and Dorian gives Chaol the horse.
Right.
And Celaena's like, oh yeah, I had this horse.
Crusader.
I stole this horse, from the King of Xandria or whatever. And they're like, what? And she's like, maybe one day I'll tell you that story. And now you know that story and you know how special that horse is to her and what that moment meant. But
even after it, it's so special because, it was at first we're stealing these horses. And then it's special and she felt free, right? Free for her. Oh my God. And then the significance of freedom Cressida has because she sells Cressida for Sam's freedom. Cressida symbolizes freedom from the beginning. First, she frees Cressida from that King Beric, I think his name is. Lord Beric or something. She frees the Cressida from the stable. Then, in turn, Celaena feels free. And then she sells Cressida for freedom. It's beautiful. It's actually really beautiful.
It is, isn't it? And you wouldn't know. People that don't read Assassin's Blade, you don't have, I feel like you're missing 50% of the story. Even though, the series is complete without Assassin's Blade, but you're missing so much. Because Sarah doesn't introduce characters willy-nilly. Everybody has a purpose. Everyone has a reason.
I've learned the second they have a name, I know that just like Caltine, I know she's a throwaway character. I know she has a name for a reason. I don't know the reason yet. I still want to punch her in the face, but I also feel bad for her because she's clearly a pawn in a bigger plan and the conduit for something. But that doesn't mean I don't like her right now.
Caltain's important in these two books, just as you said, a pawn. And I remember you texted me and she's like, why isn't anyone talking about the fact that they all have headaches? Everybody's having headaches. What does this mean? And I think that Caltaine having an opium addiction to deal with her headaches is really important and something that people don't talk about a lot. She was trying to scheme her way into Dorian's bed or whatever, but she was also going through something. And at this point, we don't know what that something is, but she had an issue. There was something wrong and she didn't possess the tools to figure out what it was. Because even Celaena has those headaches. She's like, what the fuck is why?
And the headaches are more reoccurring. They're reoccurring when it's in the castle.
Right. And that all of it. It's all very it's all very. And I know we haven't touched on it in this episode, but that's fine because as Sarah tells us, everything is repeated. But the importance of Nehemia and the importance of Eowyn is brought up again. But I just want to say again, that is another friend that Celaena, another female friend that Celaena lost. Yeah. Not necessarily through a betrayal.
And she also did the self-sacrifice thing because when Nehemia was talking to Elena, she even says, as we know when they're in the passage, she goes, she's not going to like this. She's not going to survive it. And it's this whole, it's very Feyre / Rhys / everybody of self-sacrifice, of the greater good. And that's exactly what I thought of when you connect the dots. And then Nehemia is willing to do anything for her people, for anything for the greater good. You know that with her fight that she has with Celaena. And she even said, she goes, this is going to break her. And Elena goes, she's been broken before. She can pick herself back up. This is what needs to happen to light the fire that she doesn't know in herself.
And speaking of breaking, how emotional was it to be with Celaena as she rolled up in the prison cart to Endovier, and her knowing where she was going and being so scared? And she says, like, we're approaching this giant wall. And of course, in Assassin's Blade, we don't know what that is, but we know later that is the wall that no one gets, within certain, and she almost touched it. And, she says the mantra, she says that she won't be afraid. And she basically says, like, I will not break here. But before she does that, she's so scared.
She's so scared. And even with when she saw the stag, I sent you a picture of me crying because she's going through that quote, and it wasn't just a figment. It reminded me of when Harry saw his dad's Patronus, the stag that winds up being his. And that's completely symbolic too, that it is a stag for Terrasen. And then it wasn't moving, and she's just screaming, run. There's two moments that you really, in Assassin's Blade, that I feel like she feels scared for her life. And it's when she's in the sewer, and in that moment on the way to Endovier. She is a badass. She is an assassin. She's very, cocky, especially when she gets caught, because she can typically get out of everything. She mentions how Arobin, he trained her, which I feel like, especially as women, we should always be trained to know how to get out of a situation first. And then you build up the self-defense. So I understand that part of her training. And she can't get out of this. Those are the two moments. And the way Sarah writes it, you are scared for her. You feel her fear. And especially when the King of Otterland, he's like, you're going to be there for 9 lifetimes. And it's going to be slow. Or you're going to feel every single moment that you're here. And people aren't expected to survive being here.
You bring up a really good point about the sewer. That was the first moment where you said where I was really afraid for her. And she's got all that water, and the grate's not opening, and like Sam's knife is breaking, trying to get her out. And they're holding hands, and she's like, just take my body back to Terrasen. And then it just cuts to black. And then, but you're just like, oh my God, wow. It was just very powerful. It's one of those very powerful moments. And this is only these are only,
that's the best part, is everybody keeps saying, like, this isn't even supposed to be the emotional part, and you're like, well, thanks, I'm just gonna have a heartbreak for the rest of my life.
Yeah, like these aren't even.
How does anybody read books after this? Obviously I will read after this, but to have the same impact there's so much adventure. There's so much emotion. There's a lot going on, and I don't know how to phrase it a lot of the times, because it just sounds like I'm a rambling mess and I'm going in circles.
Well, you asked me when you started this, you're like, oh, well, am I going to have a book hangover? And I said, without any hesitation, like, yes, you will. I don't know how long it will last, because as I stated earlier, I can't predict how you're going to react to things, but I do know that you will have a book hangover with this.
And you could say that, knowing how bad my book hangovers were for ACOMAF and ACOWAR. And Crescent City, it wasn't that bad. It was like, it took me a couple days and I read the next book. But from ACOMAF to ACOWAR, it took me 2 weeks. And you said, maybe just reread ACOTAR and ACOMAF and then go back into ACOWAR and you'll transition better. And I couldn't get through ACOTAR because I was just so bored. I already knew what happened. Then I tried with ACOMAF and I go, no, because I was just getting emotional all over again. And then I had to bite the bullet. And however I processed it. So that's why I don't know how long it's going to take me to go through the series between the book hangover, between books, or do I read a lighter book in between to try to not be so attached to the characters in the story. But also, isn't that part of the whole experience now that I get to read them all back to back and I'm not waiting years between books? So I don't know.
Yeah, my professional opinion.
You can say that way. You have a master's in education and literature. This is totally a professional opinion.
Blow through them all. You're at 3, just go through and finish them because everything will be fresh. All the details will be fresh and the emotion is what it is. Now, as this is a bonus episode and we're not entirely sure when it's going to be airing, although we have an idea, just the way that things are sandwiched in, we're also not sure what will be next.
Yeah, we don't really have.
Yeah, so I don't know what is going to be next in the airing schedule after this episode, so I have nothing to promote here.
But I'm trying to get into the habit of posting on our Instagram account and also on my personal TikTok of the calendar. So if we have a bonus episode coming for that week, we'll definitely add it in there. I think it helps to get excited of what you're looking forward to. I think we've also said before, we are full of spoilers. We are not a spoiler-free podcast. A lot of things overlap, a lot of things intertwine, especially in the world of the worlds of SJM. Luckily, we have we're pretty themed with everything. So if we're talking about ACOMAF and you want to listen to that one, but you haven't read ACOWAR yet, go for it. But just know that there are going to be spoilers, just like in this episode. We're just kind of going back and forth between Prithian and but I digress. We try to let you guys know. We want to let you know also in the episode descriptions. Laura's been doing a great job about kind of giving an outline of what we're talking about, any spoilers or triggers that we're going to be talking about. I think that's really important. Yeah, but we hope you will like this bonus episode. We don't know how often it's going to happen because of the way I'm reading this, but the Throne of Glass series is definitely going to be something to incorporate into this because it's fun. It's not 2020, and I think that's one of the things that I said to you in Throne of Glass. One of the quotes that I really liked was, I can survive well enough on my own if given the proper reading material. And yes, I mean, if we're not all feeling that at this point. So I think that was great. Such vibes. And let's see how 2021 goes. I'm not going to say yay. I'm not going to say nay. We're just going to go with it.
We'll just go with it. And we will be posting whatever episode is next after this. And I hope you enjoy listening. And, let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about. We want to be as interactive as possible, but also talk about the stuff that we actually like.
Well, and I think Laura, she's came up with a really good idea. So if you think we haven't spoken about a topic that you want to hear us talk about, please let us know in the comments. Or sometimes we have a bad habit of going off on tangents. So we'll say, hey, we're going to talk about that. And then we don't talk about that. Please know that we're keeping a list of the things we haven't addressed so we can address them in a later episode that'll just be kind of a hodgepodge. Like, oh, and so wants to know, what are your thoughts on chapter 55? So it'll be fun. And I think it helps engaging with us, especially on Instagram. If you're not following us, please feel free to ACOFAE podcast on Instagram. And we look forward to hear all the interactions. That's one of the reasons we wanted to start this podcast, is just to keep talking about it and understanding different points of view. It makes it fun.
So thanks for listening and tune in next week.
Thank you. Bye.